He'll just like tweet rap lyrics. Like it's a lot like my Twitter account was in like 2011, when I was like, I need to get this Big Sean lyric out there like now. 0 favorites, 0 retweets, nothing.
The process, I guess, still kind of being trusted at the moment. But Nick, is anybody outside of Philadelphia rooting for the Sixers to win Thursday night?
Honestly, at this point, is Philadelphia even rooting for the Sixers? I don't know. I think the fourth quarter of that game the other night was just a wow. I mean, that crowd was completely dead. I think deep down, everybody in that building like knew this was a possibility. And seeing the way that Philly came out just incredibly flat against a Toronto team that's super banged up. You got multiple guys playing through injuries. Gary Trent could barely make it through. I think it was game 3 when he was dealing with that illness. Obviously, no Fred VanVleet in that game. You think everything is breaking in your favor. And to not only lose, but to just get absolutely housed on your home court. I don't know how if you're a Sixers fan, I don't know how you could go into this game with any level of confidence, right? I mean, you have the single biggest playoff choker of all time in James Harden. And like statistically, that's true. I actually like James Harden. I would like for him to not be a playoff choker, but it is what it is. And then you have the James Harden of coaches in Doc Rivers. Like Doc Rivers' entire career has basically been building toward blowing a 3-0 lead to an injured Raptors team.
Yeah. I mean, if you had to pick one team in the modern NBA to be the first ever to go up 3-0 and then blow it, I think Philly's your pick, right?
It's unanimous. You could poll 1,000 people on the streets of New York City and everyone would say the Sixers.
I think you might get one Knick fan that just hates themselves to say the Knicks.
Maybe not New York City. 1,000 people around the United States.
But that would also require, the Knicks being in the playoffs.
And right.
Got him.
Yep, I got him. Burn. All right, very good. So the Raptors trying to become the 4th team in NBA history to force a Game 7 after being down 3-0. I think it was like the 0-2 Kings or something like that was the last one to do it. Or there was a team, or maybe a Utah team or Dallas or someone like there's someone in the Western Conference, early 2000s. Anyway, Nick, I do want to get your thoughts though. Which injury will have the biggest impact as we go forward here? Is it Chris Middleton with the MCL, Devin Booker with the hamstring, Embiid with his thumb, Butler with his knee, or someone else?
I mean, all these injuries are massive, right? And, you didn't even include, Zach LaVine, who is in COVID protocols tonight. Alex Caruso is going to miss that game with a concussion. It seems like every series has had some sort of major injury impacted so far. Donovan Mitchell, we still don't know if he's going to play for Utah. It kind of sucks, as a fan. Obviously, you never want that situation to come to fruition. But I think right now, for me, it's either Embiid or it's Middleton, because I think the Suns kind of bought themselves some time by winning that game last night against the Pelicans. And I actually think if they're able to close out that series, which they should, they have 2 chances now. One of them is for sure going to be at home. If it gets to a Game 7, honestly, the longer that series goes, maybe that's a good thing, so you're not moving up round 2. There's a pretty good chance they'll have Devin Booker back at full strength for maybe the start of round 2, maybe Game 2 or Game 3. I feel like they still feel pretty good about where they're at as long as they can close out the Pelicans. I mean, meanwhile, you have Embiid, who has not looked like himself these last 2 games since suffering the thumb injury. I guess if you're a Sixers fan, that's the one thing you have to fall back on. If you do end up blowing a 3-0 lead and losing the series, you do have a pretty decent card in your back pocket. You can say, yeah, our best player was playing with a torn ligament in his dominant thumb. So that is something. But the one that I personally, as I sit here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, am most concerned about is Chris Middleton. And I mean, he's on a slightly longer timeline, it seems, than Devin Booker. Chances that he returns for round 2, not great. Maybe at the very end of round 2 if it's a longer series. But the way that the Celtics played against Brooklyn, I think if Milwaukee was coming into that series at full strength with Chris Middleton, it would probably be a 50-50 series. Boston maybe even favored having home court. You take Chris Middleton out of this, it's an uphill battle. I don't think Boston's going to come in and sweep Milwaukee, but you're asking a lot. Grayson Allen's not going to go 11 of 14 from 3 over every 2-game span. He's going to come back down to earth. It's going to be really interesting, I think, to see how Milwaukee ends up handling that without Middleton for most, if not all, of that series.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I can't wait for that second round matchup. Just the way the Celtics are playing. Rob Williams looks like he's Rob Williams.
Yes, he does.
Coming back even earlier. Yeah, I think he came back one day quicker than the 4 to 6 timeline. 4 to 6 week timeline in that series. Ben Simmons, it's kind of old news at this point, but do you guys have any thoughts on Ben Simmons, John? Or Nick?
On Ben Simmons, well, I mean, I've completely soured on him, just like most people have over the course of the last couple of years, really. I mean, he was supposed to be the next big thing when he was coming out of Australia, and doesn't really, I think when you're a basketball player, it's good to be able to like shoot the basketball. It doesn't seem to really like fall within his skill set in any appreciable way. So, Dan, I'm sure you love the Nets Celtics series, and I wanted a little bit more from this Nets team. I wanted to see, because I think that good Kyrie is like one of the most fun players to watch, period. So I would have preferred to like be able to see a little bit more of this, but the rest of the team faltered. I don't know what Steve Nash's deal is as a head coach, one way or the other. And then, just Ben Simmons, a punching bag, beating the dead horse. But, I'll chime in there and add in that I too do not like Ben Simmons.
I'm going to write that down. Shooting the basketball is good for a basketball.
Yeah, in general. Yeah. I mean, we should note. So for one, I mean, Steve Nash, I would love to blame him, but I feel like he was brought in not as a head coach, but more as like a vibe curator. I don't
Matthew McConaughey at Texas, like the minister of vibes. Yeah,
exactly. Like, I don't think they were ever really, leaning on him as like this master strategist. And honestly, I think he probably wishes he had more of a say than he does. I think he knows Kevin Durant from the Golden State days. I think it was more like, let's bring in a guy who we get along with and who will kind of let us do whatever we want. And, as we saw, the kind of my turn, your turn, AAU style of basketball, it can work if you're talented enough against certain opponents, but not against a Boston team that is that disciplined on defense. Although in defense of the Nets, I will say this was the second closest sweep of all time. I think those 4 games were decided by 17 points, and the record is 16. So, I'm not trying to take anything away from you, Dan. It was a thorough domination. The Nets did win 0 games, but it's not like they really got blown out in any of them. And I thought for like, if you just go like quarter by quarter, it was a much more even series, I think, than the final result implies. And, if you're looking ahead to next year, if the Nets can make a few improvements on the margins, if you can find a center who doesn't go 0 of 10 at the free throw line, if you get anything from Ben Simmons, it's not like this is a complete disaster. Like, I would much rather be the Nets than the Lakers.
Oh, absolutely. Big takeaway from that series for me is that this really did show that the Celtics have matured. Every time Brooklyn made a run in any of those games, Celtics answered it right away. Where in the past, they would start Marcus Smart would just start jacking up 3-pointers just because that's what he used to do. Now the new Marcus Smart passes the basketball, finds Jason Tatum cutting for the layup for the buzzer beater, gets to the foul line. He did do the weird diving thing at Durant, but he helped him back up because everybody was mad about the Steph Curry thing a couple of months ago. But just a big step in the maturation process for the Boston Celtics. And I think they should be the betting favorites to come out of the Eastern Conference here going forward.
All you needed to do is get Brad Stevens out of there.
Yeah.
Get him off the
sidelines. Head coach Brad Stevens. They are they're currently plus 380 to win the title, and they are plus 155 to win the Eastern Conference. So by comparison, if you're looking at Eastern Conference odds, they're at plus 155. Miami plus 215. Milwaukee 320. Philly 550. The Raptors 65-1 to win the East right now. And then the Bulls, if you're really feeling something, plus 30,000 to win the East.
There we go. As we record this on Wednesday, the Bulls are still alive here as we record this show. So,
but you can get the Bulls at plus money.
Unreal.
John, I know you love a good social media feud. Have you been following the Kevin Durant, Charles Barkley saga this week?
Yeah. Yes, I loved the tweet that I guess maybe NBA on TNT tweeted out of just like the picture of Chuck holding the mug to Durant's reply. Something about driving a bus or something going on. I mean, Kevin Durant.
The bus, yeah.
Kevin Durant's the man. Like he's like famous enough to like just go ahead and post what he thinks, and he's moved past having like the 10,000 burner accounts ready to type him up, and he just like unfiltered says his thoughts. That's so powerful. Like I don't like, my Twitter is dumb, but like unfortunately a lot of it is very, very like filtered out as to what I actually end up tweeting, and it ends up being very stupid a lot of the time. But like he just fires off whatever, and just really respect and admire the freedom that Kevin Durant has to just post and to just go at people despite being, one of the biggest public figures in American athletics.
Nick?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it goes without saying at this point. There's really no, I don't think there's anyone similar. Like there are like some pro athletes who are like kind of funny and make jokes, and you kind of have to judge athletes on a different scale. But like Durant's not even trying to be funny. He's just tweeting as if he's like an account that has 25 followers and is just going about his day. Very few of his tweets even like relate to the fact that he's like one of the 15 best NBA players of all time. He'll just like tweet rap lyrics. Like it's a lot like my Twitter account was in like 2011, when I was like, I need to get this Big Sean lyric out there like now. 0 favorites, 0 retweets, nothing. Unfortunately, he has fortunately, I guess for him, he has millions of followers and he gets a ton of engagement on it. But I think it's amazing that he's kept going, right? I mean, we're on year 5 of this kind of like becoming a thing. And he kind of got taken to the cleaners for the whole burner thing. A lot of guys would just shut it down. You would look at their account and they'd have no tweets since like 2018. If anything, he's picking up steam.
Yeah, I saw somebody tweeted out, I'm like, dude, you got to get off the internet or whatever. And he's like, nah, bro, I'm here for the long haul.
Right,
like,
exactly.
The one thing I do love about KD's Twitter page is that I understand what's going on with him. Unlike his teammate Kyrie Irving, I went down the rabbit hole last night of Kyrie tweets, and I cannot tell you at all what the hell the man is talking about. It's just all over the place. So anyways, moving on, Nick, I do have one more question for you before we make a couple picks here for MKF. If the Jazz lose in Game 6 at home, is it time to blow up that nucleus in Utah?
Yeah, I think so. And honestly, I don't even know if it's going to be up to the Jazz, right? I mean, I think it felt like that. This question, you could have asked this in like January or March or before the playoffs, and I would have said the same thing. Just based on like the body language and some of the quotes coming out of this, like it just feels like even the players themselves know that it's over. I think one of the more underrated storylines of this entire thing, like everybody wants to talk about the Gobert Mitchell dynamic, and those two have actually played pretty well. I think they've kind of gone out of their way, I think, to at least on court mend whatever differences they may have. But Mike Conley, man, I mean, he has turned into a massive shell of himself. And, you compare Mike Conley to someone like Drew Holiday. I think for most of their careers, those guys were pretty much on the same level. They were always like the next guy up for the All-Star team. Conley's a couple years older, so his decline maybe shouldn't come as much of a surprise. But I think Utah needed Mike Conley to be what Drew Holiday has been for Milwaukee. Milwaukee doesn't win the title last year without adding Drew Holiday. And I think Utah thought that would be the difference maker for them. And it kind of sucks to say, and it's not, I'm not trying to be anti-Mike Conley, but I mean, you can't win when you're getting, a guy you're paying a max salary to be your third star, and he's giving you like 6 points a night in the series. I mean, that to me has been the biggest thing that's kind of flown under the radar, is that Mike Conley was brought in to be the third star, and he's been like their 7th best player in the series. But overall, yes, I mean, I don't think if they lose the series, we're going to see Utah just throw Gobert and Donovan Mitchell on the trade block. I think it's going to work like most other NBA star situations, and Donovan Mitchell is going to put himself on the trade block, despite the fact that he is still under contract. And as we've seen time and time again, even if the team in theory has the leverage by having the contract, they actually don't have the leverage, and the player almost always gets their way.
Yeah, and unfortunately for them, Donovan Mitchell is hurt a little bit. He's got that quad injury. We don't know if he's going to go yet in Game 6. It sounds like it, but he's going to be a shell of himself. And Luka's back and looking like Luka. So it's going to be tough for the Jazz to pull that out. But let's do a couple contests here on MKF, and let's start off with Joel Embiid. Nick, 29.5 points, more or less for Embiid. He's reached 30 in 2 of 5 games of this series, but just 20 and 21 in the last 2 since he injured his thumb. How do you feel about Embiid?
I think you got to go less here, right? I think this is a pretty high line, considering he had 21 and 20 points in each of the last 2 games since the thumb injury. It was a blowout the other night, but Embiid still played 40 minutes in that game. It's not like he had 20 points in 28 minutes. Like, he basically played his full complement of minutes and struggled. He only got to the line 6 times, which for him is well below his average, only took 15 shots. Was in foul trouble, still ended up playing big minutes. So, maybe we see a situation where Embiid really makes a point to take things into his own hands and says, I'm not letting us go down and lose another game. And maybe that means he takes like 25 shots. But I mean, his comments after the game were not, I need to be better. It was James Harden needs to be more aggressive because my thumb tendon is torn and I can't be my normal self. So, until we see Embiid do it post injury, I think I got to go less here.
John, on the other side, Pascal Siakam, 22.5. He's reached 23 in 3 of 5 games, including both of the last 2. How do you feel about Siakam on Thursday night?
I'm going to go with less. I know we're rooting for the underdog story of the Raptors somehow finding a way to force a game 7 or maybe even advance. But I think Philly snaps back into it and they make sure that Siakam's not the one that's kind of undoing them. So I will take the less on that. I think Siakam goes for 18 points.
All right, very good. Nick, Chris Paul, 11.5 assists is his total on MKF. He's reached 12 in 2 of 5 games, but he's been at exactly 11 assists in each of the past 2. Can he get to 12 on Thursday night?
And just a great line by MKF HQ. These folks know what they're doing. I'm going to go less. I think the blueprint for the Suns is basically how they played that game last night. They kind of kept the Pelicans at bay throughout the entire game. There were a couple points where you thought maybe New Orleans would make a run, but it was a much more kind of team involved type of game than certainly what we saw in Game 4 the other night, where no Devin Booker, Chris Paul just kind of no-showed that one offensively as a scorer at least. But we saw a lot more involvement from guys like Mikal Bridges last night, and I think that's what Phoenix needs. So I don't know. It's so tough at 11.5, but he's done it. He's been right at 11 the last 2 games, like you said. So I'm going to lean less.
All right, John, Luka Doncic, 31.5 points is his more or less on Monkey Knife Fight for Game 6. He made 30 in his first game back. He scored 33 in the next game. How does he do in Game 6?
I'm going to go with less here as well. The Jazz defensively, provided that their whole starting lineup can kind of hold it together. I know we were talking about Mitchell a minute ago, but as long as Gobert's rim protection is good and Luka isn't getting to the bucket that way, not getting the line too much, that's just a really high number to me is kind of how it strikes it. So I'm going to go with less for Luka. He can impact the game in so many other different ways. So I'm going to say that this is less him just kind of carrying the Mavs scoring offense, and I think that he can be a little bit more on the facilitation end of things. So I'll take the less.
All right. And finally, Donovan Mitchell, if he suits up, which I believe he's going to for Game 6, 24.5, Nick, is his more or less. He's reached 25 or more in the first 3 games of this series, but he's been under that number in the last 2. And I think he finished with just 9 points in Game 5 when he got hurt. How do you feel about Mitchell?
Yeah, well, sorry for stepping away for a second there. I had to open a window. The takes are just getting a little too hot here in Milwaukee. But, man, this is tough. I'm going to go less. Because I just don't know that Donovan Mitchell's going to make it through this game. I know he's going to try to push through, but it was one of those situations where it looked like he maybe popped something. I know the MRI came back clean, but he was out right away. Didn't like really try to live through it. Like he knew something was up in that quad. So I just don't know that he's going to make it through all of Game 6. So I think you got to kind of play it safe here, unless we get news that he really feels great and he's going to be himself. I'm going to lean toward the less until we get that kind of news.
All right. Very good. Good stuff, guys. All right. That's going to do it for us on MKF Live this week. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page. You can follow all of us on Twitter. All of our Twitter handles are on there. I won't make you guys say them this week. So anyways, thanks, guys, and enjoy the draft and the rest of the NBA playoffs.